uh, before I go any further, I have to show you the safe harbor slide. Now, I don't think I'll be talking about future releases a whole lot. This will be all about Apex 18.1 and the mobile functionality that exists in that release. However, just want to show you this first. So today is all about how we can build big things for small screens, right? And actually, I'll demo this application to you a little bit later, and that application is about movies and how you can build a very compelling mobile experience, not for your average Apex application, which is a lot of data entry and report heavy. You can actually build something that normal consumers, normal people, everyday purpose application. So I almost wanted to call this building big things for small screens about the big screen, but I didn't, just to keep it concise. So my name is Shakib Rahman, and I'm the design lead for Oracle Application Express. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm simply @Shakib. And as Lena was saying, I work on a lot of UI-based functionality for Apex. So I'm the, I guess, the developer behind the universal theme, although it is not my own work. There's a lot of other members, of the Apex development team that contribute heavily to universal theme, including all of the icons that we use in Apex, right? Those are designed by our visual designer team, Bob Daly. Kyle does a lot of JavaScript. We have a new hire on the team. His name is Tim, and he works a lot of. He'll be working on new UI functionality for universal themes. It's not all just me, but we try to provide a UI framework that you can use to build compelling applications. One of the things with universal theme that I'm particularly proud of is that it lets you build a very cutting edge, very nice modern UI, from a company that isn't really renowned for UI, right? Like there's companies like Apple and many others are they're focusing on UI and design and so on. And I say, why can't we do that here with Application Express? So that's my goal with Apex, is to compete with these top players and make sure that the applications that you build are compelling and you can show this application to anyone and be proud of it. So that being said, because this session is all about mobile UI in Application Express, I think we should take a brief trip down memory lane. And the reason why I show you this specific photograph for this is because when we look down memories that we have, we always paint a more rosy picture. It's more friendlier, it's warmer. So let's go take a trip back and see what happened with mobile UI development and how Apex has come to the task. So near the very beginning, right, at the very beginnings of mobile, there was something called jQuery Mobile. And this came out in 2010, and the idea was that, especially around this time, so this is about almost 8 years ago now, mobile was still in its infancy, right? It was just getting started. The iPhone had come out in 2007, and then people were starting to take mobile a little bit more seriously. There are mobile apps, and for a long time, you would see websites that had a desktop UI and then a mobile UI. So if you were using a phone, you would go to the little mobile friendly link, or it would take you to a very small, limited website that didn't have all the functionality, right? So if you went to your bank, you might not even be able to log in. And if you did, you might just be able to check your balance, but you couldn't do anything else. You couldn't initiate a transfer or anything like that. This is the age when we had mobile websites and desktop websites. And most people would click on the desktop website to get the full experience. So around 2010, in October, jQuery Mobile came out, and they sought to help developers build mobile applications. So this is, again, before responsive design really took off and was capable as it is today. So at the time, if you wanted to build a mobile application and you didn't want to use native functionality, you didn't want to code an application just for Android or just for iOS, you'd have to use something like jQuery Mobile to get all of that touch support and all the nice UI functionality you'd expect from a native app. So that was jQuery Mobile UI, and it came out at that time. And shortly after, we came up with something called Apex 4.2. And I remember the meetings that we had discussing mobile support. And we said, Apex developers really want to build mobile applications. How do we meet that challenge? And because we weren't there really with all the functionalities of responsive design, and it just wasn't mature enough, we put a lot of work into integrating with jQuery Mobile. And we had this slide, this is from our new feature slide, and we said, hey, you can build mobile web-based applications, the same application builder, the same declarative frameworks. We're using jQuery Mobile. It has all the HTML5 region types, item types, and so on. You have a theme roller, right? With jQuery Mobile, you could customize your look and feel. You went to their website, you kind of pick some colors, you could export it, load it into your Apex application, and now you had a different UI. So that was when it first came out, and I think people were quite excited about it. Around the same time, we also came up with something called Theme 25, and this is when responsive design first kind of made its foray into Apex. And the idea was that you could build one application that works, well on desktop, tablet, and mobile. And here we also introduced the div-based layout, or the grid layouts. We had some icon functionality. We had everything was Retina display capable, meaning that it had very high resolution graphics. And we had a very compelling grid. In fact, the same foundation that we still use in Universal Theme today. So it's a declarative way to kind of lay out your page. And I think after this, people were really kind of amazed with what you could do with some of this stuff, right? It was kind of mind-blowing, like, oh wow, you can build mobile applications, you could build responsive applications. I remember going to Kscope, shortly after 4.2 came out, and there were 4 sessions on how to build responsive apps using Apex, using Theme 25. But that was a while back. So let's take a look at, where we are today. So let's fast forward a few years. This chart here shows the wireless connection speed, like average connection speed based on the wireless technology. So the chart in the orange, the bar in the orange shows you the average speed for Wi-Fi, which is about 14 megabits. And then 4G and LTE, which is almost 17. So in a way, 4G and LTE signals and connection speed is actually faster than Wi-Fi. Over these few years, we've gotten a lot bigger phones, right? The iPhone 6 came out, the 6 and 6 Plus. It was really mainstream, right? Really big phones were very common. And these are not just big phones, but they're also very powerful phones. And then around the same time, we also, with Apex 5, introduced Universal Theme. And the idea behind Universal Theme was that this is the one theme that you would need to use to build applications for any kind of device, whether it's a desktop, whether it's a mobile, whether it's a tablet. You can just use Universal Theme and you can build a very compelling application for all of these UIs. We also came up with something called Theme Roller. So rather than going to some other website and then picking colors, exporting that CSS file, and importing into your own application, why not do all of that live, running your own application? So you can change the colors, see exactly how they look, navigate from page to page, and when you're done, you simply save it. It just saves directly to your application, and you're all done. So that's what's happened since, these last few years. But what has jQuery Mobile been up to? Well, it turns out it's been fairly dormant. The last release for jQuery Mobile, the last stable release was October 31st, 2014. That is 3 years, 8 months, and 23 days to today since the last release of jQuery Mobile. It's a bit scary, right? In web technologies, 4 years is a long, long time. A lot of things happen in 4 years. So in August 22nd, 2017, so last year, Joel sent this blog post out saying that, hey, there's an important change coming to your Application Express apps. If you use a jQuery Mobile UI, we are going to deprecate it. In 18.1, you can still use these applications, but we plan to de-support it. And the reason why is because jQuery 3, which we need to use because we want to use Oracle Jet, which is a dependency on jQuery 3, and we want to use all the Jet functionality like charts and other item types, it simply does not work well with jQuery Mobile. But that's okay. We had a good time with jQuery Mobile. So long, and thanks for all the fish. But now we have better things ahead of us. As Apex developers, there's no need to panic. Your applications will still work. If you're using jQuery Mobile, your application will still work in Apex 18.1. However, it's a good time to move on to Universal Theme. So now I think we are in a better place than ever before to build a compelling user experience using Universal Theme. And I want to take the rest of the session to kind of show you how this all works. So here's just a few things I'll talk about. First, there are some new mobile components. So if you are using jQuery Mobile, we have a number of components that we ported from jQuery UI, from jQuery Mobile into Apex Standard. For example, there's list view, there's a column toggle report, there's a reflow report, which you can use and make that transition from jQuery Mobile to Universal Theme a whole lot easier. There's also touch support. So if you wanted to add some gestures to your application, if you wanted to swipe on an alert to dismiss it, or if you wanted to tap and hold something to activate some kind of menu, now you can do that. This is all hooked up using dynamic actions. We've improved data entry. So if you have a page that has a form, it can work a whole lot better. We have floating labels. We have radio buttons and checkboxes that can appear as pill buttons, so it's a larger tap area. There's a number of other improvements we've made to make data entry a lot easier. There's common things like fixed headers and fixed footers, which are very commonplace for mobile applications, and now you can do that very easily with Apex. And finally, there's a number of mobile design patterns that you can do, and we have them all in the Universal Theme sample application. So with that said, let's go into the demo and get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is, let's just walk through some of the mobile components that we have in Universal Theme in 18.1. So the first one that I want to show you is something called list view. Now this is just a standard new region type, very similar if you came from the jQuery Mobile side of things, but basically you get a nice list of content here, and it even has some built-in search functionality. So if I wanted to search for dev or something like that, you can see that it sort of just searches immediately. So that's the list view. Very useful for a very lightweight, simple page. You'll notice here that I'm also dividing it by kind of like a header. So this is divided by project. So you can see that this project has this many action items and so on. You can specify some kind of badge to the far right. It can be a counter, it can be some kind of text, and so on. The next thing is something called column toggle report. Now, what's interesting about this is many of our applications have many columns, right? They might be well suited for a large screen, but when you have a small screen, you really can't display that many columns. So with this column toggle region type, what happens is you can give a priority to these columns, and depending on the screen size, it will automatically hide or show that column. So as I make this a little bit smaller, you'll notice that fewer of my columns are displaying, and even fewer. If you really want to show a column, however, you can click on this button and simply toggle additional columns. So I can say I really want to see assigned to and maybe end date and so on. So that is the column toggle report. In addition, something else similar to this is this reflow report. So what happens here is you have a report with a lot of columns, and rather than collapsing some columns or hiding some columns, you really want to see all of them. So how do we do that in a way that still works? Well, depending on the screen size, you will reflow them so that the column headers are on the left and the column values are to the right. So you basically repeat the headers again and again for this data set. So that's the reflow report. So those are just some of the mobile components, and I'll get into a little bit more how you use them maybe a little bit later. The next thing I want to talk to you about is forms and data entry, right? So we have something called floating labels that came out, with this new release, and it's actually the default label template. And what happens here is, as I click on the field, the label shrinks to kind of anchor itself, kind of float itself to the top left-hand corner, and you can continue filling this in. So I can type in my name, and as I focus through, you'll notice that it becomes smaller. In this case, all I've done is I've defined the the icon associated with this email field, and it shows up to the far left. If I click on it, it highlights. You'll also notice this is the inline help text. It shows directly below. Here we have some real help text. If I click on this, it'll open up a dialog. That still works. Where you can have some post text and some pre-text. All of these combinations and permutations, they are all going to work just fine with this floating labels. Now here's the interesting thing. What happens if I make the screen really small? Right? Everything still works. In fact, it's a very easy to use experience, a very good user experience on a mobile device, because we have a much larger tab area. So if I'm using my finger to click on this field, now I can click anywhere here and simply focus on it and type in my values. So that's floating labels. Something else as well is radios and checkboxes. Now, this is the default UI for these radio buttons and checkboxes. So I can click on something, and it shows up fairly decent. But what would be even nicer is if it displayed as a pill button. So if I go into the quick edit and simply click on this, I can change the template options, right? At the very bottom, you'll see this item group display. And if I set that to display as pill button and save this, you'll notice now it looks like a pill button. Now, this isn't something that's new in 18.1, but here's what is. What if I was to do the same for these multi-row radios? So let's go and set this item group display to display as pill button. Now you notice that it actually works with multi-dimensional layouts for these radio buttons. In fact, it also works with checkboxes. And the last thing I'm going to do here is, at the region level, let's go and toggle some options. So what I want to do is set the item width to stretch and maybe item size large. Now we have a fairly compelling mobile user experience. On a small screen, this is far easier to see. So that's one of the new functionalities in Apex 18.1 for improved data entry. Now let's talk about touch support. So imagine that you have a page with a number of alerts, right? So or a number of success messages, or whatever it may be. And what you want to do is swipe on these alerts and then dismiss them. So for example, if I click and drag my mouse like this, just dismiss them. So what is going on here behind the scenes? Let's go and take a look at this page and see exactly how this is hooked up. So I'll go edit this page. And you see that I have my 4 regions right here. So I have my 4 alert regions. Nothing kind of different here, just using the alert template. I've set the default options, and I've added this class called swipe away. If I go to dynamic actions, I see a swipe event, and this simply says swipe to dismiss. And when a swipe event is triggered on the swipe away class, meaning I don't need to create a dynamic action for every one of these regions, I can just add a class to those things, execute some JavaScript. So here, all I'm doing here is I say, hey, the current region is basically the triggering element. I'm going to add a class which will do the animation for me. And then after 500 milliseconds, or after half a second, I'm just going to remove that from the DOM. And if I look at the CSS, again, it's fairly straightforward. First, I'm kind of preventing text selection. And I've added this transition, so in half a second kind of transition, and do no other, so in the very beginning, there's no transform. When the class is added to swipe the notification to the right, all I'm doing is I'm translating this to the X, so moving it 100% to the X, so moving it by its width, and also setting the opacity to 0. So let's just run this again, and you'll notice that as I swipe away, it's going to slide away and fade out at the same time, and then be removed from the page. Now, what I've done here is I've just hooked up a swipe event, so I could also swipe to the other side, and it'll still work. There are a few additional options you can set, and you can find these in the Apex, in the Universal Theme sample application. So here I'll load up the sample app, and I simply go to Design. I can go to Mobile Patterns, and under Touch Gestures here, this will provide you with some notable swipe event data, right? So you can use, for example, this.data.offset direction and say only when I swipe right. So when this.data.offset direction is 4, do I want to swipe this off? If you swipe to the left, don't do anything. So that's some simple ways of adding touch support. There's a few other things you can do as well. You can also do pan, so you can, say as you track your finger, you can do something with that. A press, which is basically like a tap and hold. You can also trigger them by clicking and holding. This might be useful for activating a menu, for example, or let's say you have a button, but you want it to show up some kind of menu button or dialog or something when you press and hold it. A simple tap also works, and this will be mapped as a click. So you might want to say, hey, when somebody double taps on the title bar of a region, I don't know, do something with it, maybe maximize it or something. Well, now you can do that and use this dynamic action. So that's something with touch support. Next thing I want to show you is fixed headers. Now, I have this application here, and by default, this breadcrumb bar area is already fixed for desktop applications. But when you go to a really small screen, the default was that it will scroll away as you scroll up, because we wanted to maximize screen real estate for a small screen. But if you really wanted to show this, you can toggle this on. So what I'm going to do is in my developer tools, let's just put this to the very bottom. And here I am simulating a mobile device. And right here, you see I have this button region fixed. Actually, let me do this. Let's go and make this thing fixed. So this is the footer region. That's OK. I want to really make this thing fixed. That's OK. Let's go and edit this page. Here's the button bar, and it's in the breadcrumb position. I'll simply open this up, and I can stick this to the bottom if I want to stick this to the bottom, right? But also at the page level, you have an option that says sticky header on mobile. So whatever is placed in this breadcrumb bar position, if I toggle this option on, it will stick to the very top of the page. So if I go back to refresh this, right, same behavior. At the very bottom, I have a menu button, and at the very top, I have this breadcrumb bar. Now, if I go to a small screen, it will always be fixed here. And for example, if I simulate an iPhone 6 display, here's how it looks, right? This is always fixed. Now, you may be wondering, why does this header not collapse when I'm scrolling down? Well, this is the side navigation, right? So if I open this up, it'll open up the side navigation. If I was to change that navigation, which I'll get into a little bit, then it will actually float off screen. Okay, so that is fixed headers and actually even fixed footers. Here's another example of a fixed footer. Let's say that you have a page that you're designing. So let's say you're designing an application for a desktop and a mobile, use case. For desktop, you may want to have your button bar near the top somewhere, right? You may want to have it somewhere here where you can click, create project. You can go back. But for a mobile screen, you really want this to be fixed at the bottom at all times. How do you do that? Let's go edit the page. And then here I have my fixed footer in the breadcrumb bar position. And if I open up the template options, let's say, actually, here's my footer buttons. If I open up the template options for my button container region, you'll see that there's an option that stick to bottom for mobile. So on desktop, it's at the top of the screen. If I make my screen small, now it's at the bottom of the screen, right? A very easy way. Now you can have the same, same buttons, same everything, but control the positioning of this to be on the bottom. Here's a few more examples of how this could be useful. In this example, we have, the navigation tabs menu for the mobile UI. We have this page header, which is just using the standard built-in title region template, I believe, or hero region. And you'll notice that as I scroll up, the blue header hides away out of sight, and I still have this fixed header, right? So as I scroll up, immediately it shows up. Scroll down, it hides. Scroll up even a tiny little bit, and we'll detect that you're scrolling up, and we'll show you this thing in case you wanted to sign out or something, and you don't have to scroll all the way to the very top. However, if you're scrolling down, we don't need to waste that screen real estate, right? Your navigation is still omnipresent on the screen, so we can hide that and give you even more screen real estate. In this case, for example, you can have an actions button here, you can have some icon, the page header, and still use this application. Here's another example of how you can do the same thing. In this thing, we have the same, here's your logo, and here we have a back button. Now, this is very common on a lot of mobile applications, right? You have the back button at the very top left-hand corner. It's kind of stuck. You may have some other edit buttons or other functionality to the right. Maybe you have the name of the page right here in the middle, and then you have your tab bar, right? So you can easily do this. And again, if you scroll up, the navigation, the branding area, and the logo shows up immediately. The same is true for footers. So in this example, now we're using the side navigation, but I have a footer which can allow me to go back or open some menu, right? This is always kind of stuck to the very bottom. Another way of doing this would be something like this. So maybe you have some kind of pagination information, you have a menu button, you can compose a new message or add a comment or something very easily with these types of handy positions. And this will give you all the instruction on how to use this. I kind of talked about data entry for a little bit. Here's a few more examples while I'm here. So again, let's say you have a login page or like a sign-up page. Many mobile sign-up screens are very, very simple. They simply ask for a name, email, maybe one or two other fields, some checkboxes, and that's it. So this is just using the default built-in floating labels template, nothing fancy here. Here's somewhat of a more complex form. You're creating an action item. All right, you have a task name. You have some categories here using the radio button and some priority. You have some date pickers, and you can create the task. So that's all about data entry. And here's a few good design practices you can follow. Let's go back to my application here. Okay, I think I've covered everything here, actually. I want to show you a few more things here before I kind of go off. For the jQuery mobile components, this page kind of gives you really good examples of how to use them and when it might be good to use them. So for example, here's a few list view pages. So a very simple list with right arrow, you can simply click. You can also have load more, so you don't show too many records at once. Here's one where we have the search built in, and also the we break it down by some kind of top-level column and some status. The column toggle report. So here's how you could use that. Show additional columns. The reflow report. In this case, here's all my tasks, and again, it's just broken down. I can scroll as much as I like. So a few cool things here. Now, what I want to show you is how we built this application for movies. So let's go and run this. I presented this at Kscope, and people really seem to like this because it was an example of an application that you could build with Apex, which could be useful for everybody. So all I'm doing here is I'm using the new web service modules functionality. So all of the data that's being displayed on my screen is coming from an external web service. This is all coming from the movie database. So if you go to the information section, you simply have to go here and create a free account, and you can get the API key. And then when you download this application, which will be available in the notes, you can simply install this, and here's the instructions. All you have to do is update the API key for these web service modules, and you can get the same exact data. So let's go back to the home page. And here, the first thing you'll notice is that it has a red look and feel. All I've done is I've used Theme Roller to kind of customize the colors a little bit. I'm using the navigation tabs template. And then I have a classic report template right here using the cards template. And I've customized it a little bit using some custom CSS so that I push the title to the very bottom. I have a small gradient so it kind of fades into the title region. And that's really it. I've done nothing else to this thing. When you click on a movie, you'll go to another page which will show you some movie details. So here I'm using the same positions to fix these back button and the favorites button. I have some content. I'm using the built-in tabs list template, or actually the built-in tabs region template to show these different tabs. This is just the built-in value attribute pairs. This is standard cards template again, showing images instead of the icons. Here's the comments template, and here's another cards template to show the actual trailer. So let's go take a look at how this page is built. Okay, so at the very top, I have my header, right? And all it does is it has a previous button to go back to the previous page, and I have a favorite and unfavorite button. So when I favorite something, it'll highlight red. So for example, right now, if I favorite this, it'll highlight red in a moment. And if I unfavorite it, it'll go back to being an outline again. I have some of my hidden items that I might use for the movie ID. Is it favorite or not? And then I just have a region here for the backdrop. And I'm just using a simple div. I added some custom styles to kind of blow this up a little bit more. And in this region display selector, or actually in this tabs region, this is tab container, I have 4 different class reports here. So the first class report, this is based on a web source module for movie details, right? And I pass in the movie ID. That's all I'm doing here. And then I can have some post-processing, right? Local post-processing for the data that I get back from this web source module. So you can see that I'm appending this prefix, which is the image prefix that I need to get the backdrop path. If I look at the cast, for example, again, I'm doing the same thing, a web source module for my report source. And in my post-processing, I'm doing the same exact thing for the profile image. And if you don't have a profile image, then I simply show you the no profile image coming from my application static images. Here are the reviews. In this case, what I'm doing is, for the columns that I get back, I need to map them to the custom column aliases that are part of the comments report template. Now, if you're not sure what these columns are, you can go to the Universal Theme sample application. I'll just go to the comments component page. So right here. And it'll show you a couple of examples of them, but it will also give you all of the substitution strings and the sample query to use to select. So all I've done is I've just added these substitution strings in my local post-processing. So I know that the user icon is going to get the initials of the author. I know that the icon modifier will be the class based on the hash of the author name. Same for comment text and the actions. And finally, for the trailers, all I'm doing here is I'm using cards. Here's again the same web source module, and I simply have a few column aliases for the card title, the card text, and so on. If I open these up, you can see that you can do a few more things. So in the card text, I want to display the video, so I have a div for the video with some simple styles to make it fit the container. Here's the video embed, and you see that I have the key right here, and that key comes from the web source module again. So that's all it is. And let's see how this page behaves on a small screen. So I'll just open up my developer tools and toggle this small screen mode. And here it is. So I can see all my information. I can go to reviews. I can even see the trailers. On a small screen device, when you play this, what will happen is it will actually fill this, it'll actually take up your whole screen. So it'll almost like maximize your screen if you're playing it on an iPhone. So let's go to another movie in this same mobile UI. So here's my cards. You'll notice that the header kind of sticks here, but if I scroll up again, it'll show me the movie logo, and the user menu. So let's go to maybe Rampage. So here's this movie. I can see the cast and so on. One thing that I want to point out is that so far I'm using all the standard universal theme functionality. There may be a few style tweaks here and there, but there's nothing out of the ordinary. And the idea is that when you're building a mobile user experience, you don't have to use these jQuery mobile widgets that we've ported over, right? You can use the entire functionality that you have of Universal Theme. So here, rather than showing just a list of the cast, I'm showing cards and I'm showing their the actual, the actor's name or actress's name and their character's name. So let's go and favorite this movie. And you'll notice that this toggled up, right? So this favorites counter right here, it says 7 now. So if I uncheck this, it'll say 6. A very simple dynamic action does that, but it provides a better mobile experience. Okay, so let's go to favorites. And here's all of my favorites. I just have a, let's see what kind of component this is. I believe it's a classic report. Yep. What's interesting is that in this entire application, there's only one local table that I use to store my favorites. All other data comes from the web service module. So all I do is from my movie favorites, I simply grab a few things. I have the movie a title, I have the poster path, and then like when I favorited the movie, and that's it. In my columns, you'll see I just have a few columns here. Some of them are conditional. And there's a few custom styles to make sure that the movie poster doesn't grow too large. Let's go look at the search and see how this is hooked up. So on a small screen, what will happen is the search will be anchored to the very top. And let's go and perform a search. So let's look for The Conjuring. Okay, so here's this horror movie. I can kind of click through, and I really wanted to watch the first one, and I can get into details. Let's go back. So notice that as I scroll up, the search kind of stays on screen, right? I have a nice search icon. I can search anytime I want. I can delete this result. I can hit enter again, and perform a search. All I'm doing on this page, if I was to go and inspect this page, is have a region in the breadcrumb bar position. It's using, nothing in particular except I'm just, making the items a little bit larger. I'm stretching the items. For my input field itself, all I have is I have some custom padding just to kind of space it out a little bit, and then I have an icon, the search icon. I can change this to whatever else I like. And then here's the report for the movie. I simply pass in the P6 search into my movie search web source module, and that's it, nothing else. So that's the movies application. This will be available to download, and you can see exactly how it's built. But what I want to do is I want to show you a little bit more of a demo of how you can build an application similar to this, but not really on movies, but maybe a little bit more, more normal data. So let's go and build an application. I'm going to go into SQL scripts, and let's go create some data. So actually, I'm going to go into Quick SQL, And this is what I had before. That's okay, I don't want this anymore. I'm gonna go and load another sample. And maybe I'll load the, let's see, product sales maybe. So here I have products, I have customers, I have some channels, some promotions, some sales. Really cool that I can use QuickSQL and generate all this data. I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to add a prefix to this. So I'll add an AU prefix. I'm going to add the audit columns. If I want, I can use 12c identity types. Everything else looks good. All right. So now I'm going to save my SQL script. I'll call this AU products. And let's go and review this script. So I can see, let's see how many lines of SQL I generated, 1776, interesting. So let's go run this. Right, it's going to run my 97 statements, about 35 kilobytes. Okay, all good, everything went successful. Now I can click on this Create App from Script button. And what this will do is it will go into the Create Application wizard, but it will recognize all the tables that I have, and it will create pages for me already. So here's my products, my customers, my channels, promotions, and sales. I'm going to do a few things here. Let's just go and edit some of these and add custom icons to them. That way it looks a little bit better in the navigation. So let's give it a second. All right, so these are products. So I'm thinking maybe some kind of a box or maybe something like that. Customers, I'm going to pick a user's icon here. For channels, let's pick the globe icon. Promotions, I think promotions should probably be a star. And sales, this is going to be a chart. So I kind of want my sales to go up, so I'll pick that one. All right. If I want, I can add more pages, but I think this is fine. In fact, let me do one thing. I'll add a dashboard page because I want to have a nice looking dashboard here. That looks good. And I'll move this up right here. Okay, so I have my application. Let's call this products. In fact, let's call it Apex products. If I want, I can change the UI as well here. I can change my navigation. I can pick a different icon. Let's just pick this one right here, just for the hell of it. All right, I can add some features if I wanted to. I think I'll stick to everything it is and add the feedback feature, and let's go and create that application. All right, so at this point, I have my application. I can go run this, and you'll see my login page. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to demo this entire application as if I was using a mobile device. So again, even from the very beginning, what happens here is that because it's a small screen, right, I don't need to show you this background container or anything. I don't need to encapsulate this login field in a region. So with Universal Theme, we automatically hide it. It just stretches to fit the content. So here, let me log in. Okay, so by default, I get this layout. I get my page header here. I have my dashboard, products, sales, and so on. I can open up my menu and kind of go to the next page and so on. So, and here's my charts. You'll notice that it's all responsive. It all works fine. But what I want to do is let's make this navigation appear on the bottom of the screen. Okay, so let's go and do that. I'm going to simply edit this application. I can use the Spotlight search that we have. You can activate this clicking here or simply using your keyboard shortcut. I think it's a Control single quote on US keyboards. And what I want to do is I want to go into user interface attributes. Then let's go and edit this desktop UI. And instead of using the side navigation, I'm going to use top and the top navigation tabs. Now there's a couple of template options that I can select. So for desktop, do I want to display the labels above or inline? And for mobile, do I want to even display labels or not? So here, I'll say let's display the labels inline. And for mobile, I do want to display the labels. Okay, so let's go and refresh this page. And now you'll notice that at the very top of my screen, I have my tabs. And on a mobile UI, I have my tabs at the very bottom. Now, I think this application has too many of these tabs, especially for a mobile screen, right? If I'm using even an iPhone 10, you'll see that it's a little bit cramped. There's just too many icons here. So let's go and condition some of these out. Again, I'm going to use my handy search here and going to shared components lists. Here's my page navigation. And what I don't want to have is I kind of don't want to see my sales here. So I can just condition this out. And I can also condition out promotions. Did I do this right? Promotions and sales. Did I do this? Never. Okay, good. Refresh the page. Why is this not working? In any case, let's see. Just make sure this is the right. I made a mistake. This is not the correct list. Sorry, that was the page navigation. That's on the home page. Let's go into this one. This is the correct one. So here I'm going to condition this out and this thing. All right. That's a lot better. So let's go back to an iPhone 6 size. You'll see that it's a little easier to use. Something else that you could do is you could have a color highlight for this icon here. So let me show you how you do that. If you go into the item here, so let's say I want to highlight my dashboard. You can add classes to a number of different places in this template, and you can find out where all you can add them simply by going here and opening up this dialog. So I say this is my theme, and this is my top navigation tabs. So here it'll tell me I can add some badge if I wanted to. So let's say I have 10 products or some 5-starred items, the link class or the list item class. So what I want to do is I want to make the back of this look a little bit different, right? So let's make dashboard really stick out. So for attribute 3, I'm going to do a utility color from the Universal Theme Sample App. So I can go here, I can go to color status modifiers in the Universal Theme Sample App, and I like this red color. So I'm just going to copy that. Let's go into this and just paste that in. Here we go. So an easy way to kind of add some color to your navigation bar. If I go back to the full screen, it shows up here. Now you may say, hey, that's a bit strong. I really don't want the entire thing to get colored. I just want to have the color for the item or just the icon itself. Well, I can actually even apply this color right here where the icon is. And now what will happen is it'll just be the icon which has that color, right? So that might be more appropriate for what you want to do. Okay, so far we've done a couple of things. Let's go and make a few more changes to this application. So I think my dashboard looks fine, but what I can do here is add some icons to these charts. Let's go edit this page. And right here, this is something that's new in 18.1. I can pick an icon for this chart. So this is the area chart. So I can type in area, I can get this icon. And if I want, I can also add a color directly right here. So I can say, I want this, and I want this chart to be color 1, which is that first blue color that we see here. Okay, and I'm going to do the same for these other guys as well, so these other regions. So let's add another icon here. This is the bar chart, and maybe color 2, and this one is a line chart and a pie chart. So all right. That's fine, and then color 3. This is really nice. I can add a filter, and I can sticky this filter. So I'm going to go here and type in pie, get this pie chart, and maybe you color 4. Okay, so I have my 4 icons defined. If I refresh, you're not going to see them, not yet at least. So there's a template option that must be toggled to display these icons. Let's go in here and display this icon. And I can do the same for all the others. So I'll do that from here. Display region icon, display region icon, display region icon. Okay, now if I refresh, we get nice icons here. The last thing I want to show you is let's go and sticky this thing to the very top. So this is my breadcrumb title bar. I go to the page level and I say I want to stick this to the very top. So on desktop, no big difference, but now on mobile, I have this dashboard. It's always visible on my screen, and I can navigate around. So that's a few other tricks you can do. I'll finally go into this admin before I get into questions here. So here's my admin page. I can see some feedback. I can also submit some feedback here. And this should also work just as well on mobile right here. Okay, very good. So let's see if I have any questions. Okay, so not a whole lot of questions. So I can demo a few more cool things here that you can do. So I have my application so far. I've done a couple of things, but what could we do to make this a little bit more mobile friendly, right? Maybe you have things that you only want to show on small screens or only want to show on large screens. Now, we haven't documented this yet, but we expect to update the Universal Theme Sample application with a whole lot more reference classes that you can use. But for right now, what you can do is hide some components fairly easily. So let's say I go to maybe my dashboard right here, and maybe I don't want to show these 2 charts, right, for whatever purpose. I can click on Edit Page, and for these right here, I can add some class to say when they will be visible or hidden. So if I say hidden extra small, they will be hidden on extra small screen devices or extra small devices. So I'll use this and I'll go again here. So what this will do is on large screens, everything displays correctly. However, on a small screen, you see that I only see chart 1 and 2. Now you can use this trick all over the place. I chose to conditionally hide the navigation for all resolutions, but really what I could have done is I could have just hidden it only for small screens. So let's go and do that the right way. So let's go back to lists, go to my desktop navigation menu, and maybe for administration, rather than using PL/SQL, these conditions, which are server-side conditions, let's use these custom attributes. Now, again, you can open up this list, go to top navigation tabs, and this says this is the list item class, right? This applies to the entire list item. So I could simply say hidden extra small here. And if I go back to my screen, you still see administration here, but on a very small screen, you don't, right? So another really easy way for you to be able to hide that functionality from displaying. Okay. Let's see if there's any other interesting tricks that we can do. If I go back to, let's go look at my customers. Here I have an interactive report, and let's see how this behaves responsively, right? It's not ideal because you still have to use your horizontal scroll bar, or you have to kind of pan these results, but this create button, the reset, the actions, all of that is still responsive. You can still use that within your application. Even this menu, right? It's still available. You can still use feedback. All of these things are, just cookie cutter Apex out of the box. Let's see if there's anything else I can kind of show you really quickly in the 5 minutes I have remaining. Let me use this opportunity to talk to you about a few new things in Font Apex actually too. So this is interesting. So when you're using these icons, right? Because now we have font apex large in Apex 18.1, depending on the size of the component, we'll automatically use the correct size icon. So if you have a media list and you have the large option turned on, it will use the large style by itself. So let's say you're on a mobile device, right? Depending on, maybe you have a home page, maybe you have a really salient navigation that you want to use, you can simply use this option and show them all at the same time. Another thing you can do that's really cool is, let's say you have this media list, and I'm going to update the template options on this. You can use the layout and say, you know, I really want to have this in maybe 2 columns. You know, I can apply the badges or what, but this should still work fairly well on mobile, right? It'll still scale down to 1 column because the screen is just not going to be wide enough to show it. These icons you can use. You can also apply background color there. Let's go look at a few more things. I showed you the touch support. The navigation tabs are right here. This is interesting. The last one I'll show you is this compact breadcrumbs. Now, this might not be as useful for mobile applications, but if you want to have a consistent UI across mobile and desktop, right? What happens is on a typical breadcrumb is fairly large. If I click into one of these products, you might see a breadcrumb which is going to be about this size. But if you don't want it to take up this much space, you can toggle the compact breadcrumb template option, and it will be always small, the same way that you see it on a mobile device. So in this thing, I've already turned this option on, but if I turn it off, you'll see what it looks like without it. So here's how the breadcrumb would look like, right? And automatically after a while, it should kind of collapse itself. So if I reload the page, you'll see, you know, hey, it's large now, it gets smaller. But on a small screen, it's always compact. Well, you can use that handy template option to always show it compact. So if you don't want to take up a lot of space and have that consistent experience between the two, you can do that. So let's go back into my presentation. That being said, right, with all these demos and the movies application, all these universal theme functionalities, as you are out there building your next Apex application, you should consider what does it mean to be mobile, right? What is the mobile use case for your application? What does it mean to be mobile for our applications, right? Do you build 2 different applications? Or do you build one application that works for both of these different devices or both of these different use cases? How do your users plan to use your application? Are your users primarily using this on a mobile device, or are they primarily using this on a desktop and occasionally on the mobile device? And finally, what does it mean for us as developers, right? Do you really develop a separate application, or do you build one application that's responsive? And of course, the answer to that is that it depends, but I would say that for the vast majority of use cases, really build a responsive application that works best for most use cases. And if you have some pages that are very commonly used, I would optimize those for mobile rather than building a mobile specific application, right? You can optimize your key homepage, your key navigation flows for mobile, and yet keep your entire application, you know, a large screen friendly versus building a separate application where you have duplicated application logic. I think that's the direction that the entire industry is moving into, and that's the direction that I think you can do with Apex. So to end this off, should I migrate my jQuery mobile applications from jQuery mobile to Universal Theme? Yes. You absolutely should. In future versions, it will be desupported. Finally, can I build a compelling mobile experience with Universal Theme? And I think the answer to that, as you've seen, is yes. You can use the built-in functionality of Universal Theme and a little bit of custom CSS and JavaScript to build a really compelling user experience. With that said, I think there's a very bright future ahead of us for application development, and now is the best time to build these types of apps. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed your webinar.
Perfect. Thank you, Shakib. Look, I don't know if you see questions, but I do have a few in my list. If you want, I can read it to you if that's not a problem.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, let's start from Jürgen. Jürgen has
Yep.
said, is there a way how we can recognize a double tap?
A double tap? Yes, you can, absolutely. So I can show you this right here. If you go to the Universal Theme sample application, under these touch gestures, using this event, there's a tap count. So if I tap this twice, for example, you can trigger something. So you can say, hey, that tap count equals 2, then do something with it.
Perfect. I think that settles it. Scott is asking, so with 18.1 features, do we still need to sort of design for like 4-inch applications versus like 20 desktop ones? Or should
Sorry,
it be
I'm
like
not
a
sure if I follow the question. So can you repeat that again? I'm not sure if I follow the question.
so are we still needing the design like enterprise app pages specifically for 4-inch screens versus like a desktop screen?
So I think it depends. So for enterprise apps, right? We think of enterprise like even within Oracle, there are many applications that are built for enterprise use cases, and they have many reports and forms and so on. But what I would say is, how many applications do you use today which have been built 5 years ago or 10 years ago, right? Depending on where you're working, it could be a lot, right? At Oracle, I see applications routinely that have been built quite a long time ago before we really had a lot of these responsive design functionalities. So I would say target your application so it works best on all screen sizes, right? Ideally, it would work on any screen from a 4-inch phone to a 27-inch laptop, large screen display, because you don't know where your users will use your applications in the coming years, right? More and more people are already using tablets and mobile devices for the enterprise use case because they are becoming more mobile and they want to check things on the go. So I would say design for both of them, but if you had to pick one, I would say design for smaller screen sizes, because that's where the industry is going, and that's where people's natural instinctiveness is to use something on the go, right? Most people check email on their phone than they do their desktop, and there's many other things like that.
No, I agree. Another one, the classes that you use, like I don't want to say the non-documented one, but the ones that like hidden for small
Right.
screens and stuff, are they like 18.1 specific, or were they part of like Apex?
No, those are not 18.1 specific. Those will work, I believe, with any version of Universal Theme, but we haven't done a very good job of documenting them. But we intend to fix that, and we've already documented a number of things for the update, for a future update to the Universal Theme application. So we will document, there's a number of utility classes, number of these responsive classes, there's a number of classes to help with formatting text, and all of that will be available.
Yeah. And I think Maxime Tremblay, he did a great job exposing some of these classics. So Scott, if you want to check out his blog, I think there's heaps of it running just to help you out on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Maxime's a great guy, and he had a wonderful session at Kscope as well on advanced CSS techniques. So absolutely.
Another one, let me just double check. You said that we can download your movie app. Are you going to share a link, or do you have it on your blog or somewhere? Where can people find it?
So I will send you an email with the link. I can also tweet it out, and anyone can download it. The only thing you have to do is sign up for the API and get the API key and replace it in the web source modules.
Okay, sounds good. And the other demo app that you used, some people asked about it, the first one that you used with the swipe and whatever you did on the other one. Is that going to be shared as well?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll also make that available too. I don't think I have yet, but I will. It's this application right here. Yep. That's a good one to make available.
No, it sounds good. And the last one, it's like fresh from production on my end. I have people who had designed a mobile app, and there's like in development phase of it with mobile jQuery, I mean, and there's only a single interface, like mobile interface. What would you recommend for them in terms of, do they start building Universal Theme from scratch, or is there a way how to migrate the mobile one into Universal Theme one?
So it depends on the complexity of the application. You can use a theme switch wizard. I believe there's some work that went into that. So you could go to universal theme using the theme switch wizard, but the result won't be ideal, right? You'll still have to make a lot of changes. So I would say that this is probably a good time to rethink of your application and really start from scratch and build it out to, using universal theme functionality from the very beginning. For example, we have those 3 jQuery mobile components that we've ported and that are now available to all applications. But as you saw in the Movies app, I elected not to use those because the functionality that we have to provide a very rich kind of end user experience, we didn't really need to have too many reflow reports or column toggle reports, right? For the list view, I opted to use maybe the media list or a classic report with some conditional, with some custom styling. So I would say it's a good opportunity to start anew and really, build from the ground up using all the functionality from Universal Theme. But if that's difficult to do, then you can use a theme switch wizard. When you do that, your components like the list view and so on, they'll be preserved, and so you can still run them without having to completely change your queries or anything.
Yep, sounds good. No worries. Thanks, Shakib, on that one. And I think that concludes the list. The last one was from Jürgen saying, "What's your favorite movie overall?"
Oh, what's my favorite movie overall? Oh, I have so many movies that I really like. I'd say Matrix probably on the top of my list somewhere. I really like the Matrix.
All good. Anyone else with the questions? I think we can pretty much close it down. No worries. Shakib, I can't thank you enough for being here with us today. Appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
And thanks everyone for joining us for session with Shakib. As you know, next one is next week, same time, so Tuesday 31st with Tyson. So if you wanna, he's gonna talk about universal theme and probably some less known features in it. So if you wanna join in, check out the AUSOC website and register for that one.
I highly recommend it. I think it has a lot of value for people, especially as you use universal theme more and more. It'll be really good to learn these advanced techniques. So I highly recommend it for anyone on the call.
Perfect. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.